Hey folks, about a month ago I posted a video outlining my first impressions of the Mad Max 4 Fury Road trailers. I talked about how the trailer gave me the impression that the film would be a Mad Max 2 rehash, my concerns about CGI and the comic book-like appearance and excessively colourful visuals, and I outlined the next phase in Max's life that I'd like to see in the series. I've now seen the finished film of Mad Max 4 Fury Road twice, and so this video will give my take on the actual movie. This is more of a straight review rather than my usual film analysis approach. And it's rare that I do straight reviews, but because I very much like Mad Max 4, I thought it was worth doing. Now there's probably going to be a lot of plot spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want the plot spoilers, then just, go and watch the movie first and then come back and watch this video. Okay, so fortunately my negative impressions from the trailers were only correct to a small degree. The film is a sort of rehash of Mad Max 2 as I expected, but only in terms of the role played by Max himself and the use of tanker-based action scenes. Once again, Max is a tortured, wandering soul who gets sucked against his will into helping a group of decent people defeat an army of savages, and once again after helping them he wanders into the wilderness at the end, unwilling to stay with the people he has helped because he fears emotional connection with others. However, this rehashing is hugely offset by the fact that Max is basically one of three central characters. The other two characters, Furiosa and Nux, are entirely new to the series and each has their own unique and interesting journey. So these new characters bring a good dose of unpredictability to the story. The CGI aspects of the film mostly don't cause too many problems because it appears that the filmmakers have tried to do as much as possible with real stunts and real vehicle crashes. If there is a lot of CGI, then it must have been pretty damn good because most of the stunts and crashes looked real to me. The ambition and extravagance of some of the action scenes made it inevitable that a certain amount of CGI would be used, such as for the sandstorm, and the same goes for some of the environments such as Immortan Joe's Citadel. The scale of these are just too awkward to shoot for real. There were only a few CGI moments that I found particularly unnecessary and annoying, such as the CGI flames spewing out of a guitar, which just totally didn't look real to me, and a big truck crash which has the same guitar and parts of vehicles flying at the camera in slow motion CGI for the 3D crowd. This is one of the things I really don't like about 3D filmmaking. When you watch the films in 2D, the details that are put in there to please the 3D viewers suddenly become distracting. But, like I say, these bits of CGI annoyance were few and far between. The coloration issues which I had concerns about, such as the unnaturally strong reds and oranges, are mostly present throughout the movie along with some blue-tinted day for night shooting. Compare that with the scenes in Mad Max 2 which were actually shot at night. The Fury Road night scenes look very unnatural. For me, these colour issues generally made a lot of Mad Max 4 look like a cartoon. I suppose it could be argued that some of the colour schemes are thematic. For example, Max does say something in the opening narration about fire and blood.
My name is Max. My world is fire and blood.
So maybe the strong red colour in many of the explosions is supposed to look like blood. However, the film gets away with these coloration and CGI issues because there's so much other stuff going on that is very good. For starters, Fury Road is the most action-packed new movie that I've seen in probably a decade. There's probably a good 40 minutes worth of the 2-hour runtime taken up by action scenes. And there's a lot of imagination gone into the action as well. The vehicles used by the various gangs are specially designed for warfare in ways that directly reveal that although the gangs are violent savages, they're also intelligent, organised and highly resourceful. After all, intelligent psychopaths are much more scary than stupid ones. The giant spike-covered truck that charges into an early battle and attempts to slice Furiosa to pieces with the giant saw on an extendable arm was a highlight moment for me. I really liked that. There's also a lot more gunfire in this film than there was in Mad Max 2, which works okay, but I did like the thing in Mad Max 2 of bullets being a scarce and valued commodity just like food and oil. I also very much like the bizarre action scene between the three lead characters that takes place on foot instead of in moving vehicles. It was unusual and very well done. Most of the action is very good and imaginative, but the, at times, horrifying violence of the second Mad Max movie is generally avoided, so it feels weaker by comparison. I'm not saying that there should have been more violence for the sake of sensationalism. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. Mad Max 2 was very violent, but its violence was in part specifically made to be appalling rather than appealing, which I approve of because violence is an ugly thing, and Mad Max 2 was presenting a very ugly side of humanity, a very ugly world. The action in Mad Max 4 does get a bit silly in the end chase scene, which tries too hard to outdo the action scenes that went before it. Max bouncing around on poles, being caught and held up by Furiosa, and leaping from one vehicle to another and being able to fight after taking an arrow through the hand, it all felt very unreal to me. Mad Max 2's ending is still the greatest road chase scene of all time in my book, and in that action scene, Max never even leaves the cabin of the truck. And the final car crash of Mad Max 4 uses the very, very tired modern movie cliché of a character dying in slow motion with the sound reduced to near silence and angels singing over the soundtrack, God, I'm fucking bored with movies that do that. These can be considered minor gripes, but they do reveal how much more well thought out the action in the first two Max films was. So what else has Mad Max 4 Fury Road got going on for it without me getting into deeper film analysis territory? Well, the attention to detail in the costume and vehicle designs is simply incredible. At one point I spotted what appeared to be a baby's skull attached to the back of a bad guy's helmet. And that bad guy is only on screen for about 5 or 10 seconds at most. Little things like that give the impression that even incidental characters have an actual history of their own, instead of just being wafer-thin fodder. The whole future society concept shown in Mad Max 4 is much more extravagant than in any previous Max film, almost otherworldly in fact. It's not necessarily convincing, but it's detailed, imaginative, and arguably symbolic on many levels. It almost feels like Conan the Barbarian with cars. Now, I know some people have objected to the so-called feminism themes in Mad Max Fury Road, but personally I think the way it's done fits in very well. The Max films have generally depicted a lot of violence committed by warmongering men, and so shifting some of the attention to the role of women in this future society seems quite appropriate. I certainly don't think the film comes off as anti-male, because Max and Nux are both clearly portrayed as hero characters in their own right. In fact, it could even be argued that the use of Immortan Joe's wives in the narrative was basically an excuse to show some half-naked, wet, attractive women for the male viewers. But then you've got the excellent character Furiosa. We get snippets and clues of her personal history, her character is fairly well written, and I agree with the majority of reviewers that Charlize Theron plays it really well. She's a very naturalistic female action star, on a par with Sigourney Weaver in Aliens in my opinion. But the guys in the movie aren't pushovers. Immortan Joe's son, for example, is an absolute monster. So personally I think the film gets its man-woman relationship themes just right. I also previously raised concerns that I didn't think Junkie XL would produce a good score for Mad Max 4, and I'm happy to say that he's totally proved me wrong. It hasn't quite got the harrowing sadness and sheer aggression of Brian May's score for Mad Max 2, which is one of the best movie scores ever, but it's still really good. It fits very naturally into the film and knocks the socks off most other modern musical scores. So well done, Junkie XL. Now there was always going to be a big problem for Mad Max 4 in that the third film was such a poor installment in the series. The evolution of a new brutal society emerging from the ashes of the old world came across quite well in Mad Max 3, and it provides a bridge between the scavenging gangs on wheels of Mad Max 2 and the cartoonish medieval armies of Mad Max 4. Thunderdome had its moments, but it didn't do anything particularly interesting with the Max character, and Fury Road inherits the same dilemma of what to do with Max next. Unfortunately, Mad Max 4 for me is an even bigger failure in terms of the Max character. Now I don't mean Tom Hardy's performance. In fact, I find it really hard to make my mind up about Tom Hardy in this role, because Max is written so badly in this movie in the first place. So Tom Hardy didn't really have much to work with.